What's happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and in this video we are talking about everybody's favorite topic, the meta. Now, frankly, I'm tired of this discussion because it comes up every single live stream, why the meta should be lower or why the meta should be higher. So I'm just going to do another video on it. I'm going to break down why I think the 150 meta just makes the most sense, both from a gameplay perspective as well as mathematically. I went ahead and I watched a bunch of videos of different people and their opinions on the meta. Oros, Scott's, Fighter PL, Dammit Jim, Stilovsky. I went and scoured through all of the Reddit threads discussing the meta. I went into the GameFAQ threads discussing the meta. And I'm absolutely sick of even seeing the word at this point because of how much research I've done into the topic. But I'm going to be talking about why 150 just makes the most sense. And I'm also going to be touching on pretty much all of the counterpoints I've seen against that. So to start, I want to call attention to a point that Ouroboros made in his video. He said that the meta is only going to be relevant to the duelist PvP scene, and that it doesn't matter if you want to use a high spell that requires 70 in, and it doesn't matter if you want to use a special weapon that has, unique attributes. It's about dueling, and that's it. And frankly, I don't think that's accurate. The meta, while yes, it is about connectivity in PvP, more importantly, the meta, as Scott pointed out, is about keeping people together. The originating idea behind the meta was, after people finish the game, what level should they stay at so that they can still find people to play with, namely for the sake of PvP. Now, one of the key points I want to draw attention to in what I just said is after finishing the game. Because I think that's what a lot of people seem to be missing out on with this. To be frank, Elden Ring is by far the longest Souls-like game we've ever had. I don't think anybody's trying to argue against that. People are going to finish this game at a higher level. On my first playthrough, I ended at 150, and that was purposefully from stopping leveling. I got to 150 and I said, I don't want to go higher. I had like 10-15 million souls at the end of it. I didn't really lose all that, or excuse me, runes. I didn't lose all that many runes as I played, but I stopped at 150. I felt comfortable with that. In both the walkthrough as well as walkthrough prep, I decided I'm going to spend every rune I get, not farming, obviously, just spend every rune I get from doing all the content, doing 100% of the content, getting platinum, all that. I ended up above 170. Like, I could have gone to like 173 or so, but I decided to just stop at 170 for the, because I was like, all right, no, it's clear that 150 gets blown past. But so the point I'm making here is, when people are going to be playing this game, especially for their first time, even if you assume they're going to lose runes from dying, I would argue that most people are going to finish this game well above the suggested meta of 120, 125. And never in the history of the Souls game have we had a meta level that's below the level that people are finishing a game at. It doesn't make sense. Because, you don't want to get towards, like, you finally reach Mountaintop of the Giants, and you're like, well, I hit 125, I still got to do Mountaintop, and Millennia, and Farum Azula, and Lord of Blood, and I'm not going to spend a single rune. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody. And I know a lot of the longtime Souls players, yes, could you get through the game at 125? Sure, you could probably beat it at 100. I mean, people do rune level run ones on this game. But the point of the meta, circling back to what was previously said, is it's about overall connectivity with the community. It's about even the new people, even the first timers who are going to try chugging red flasks in duels and then try to teabag you with 3 of their friends because they just think that's fun. It even includes them. Even the people that I don't like, they are supposed to be part of the meta as well. And so at the end of the day, having a meta that is below the average level people are going to finish the game at does not make sense. It just doesn't. Now, given FromSoft would be the only people that actually have access to this data, but I would bet that the majority are finishing the game well beyond 120 and 125. I would say on average, people are probably finishing 135, 140. If they know what they're doing and they're spending every rune they get and they're not farming, easily 150 or higher. So moving on from that, the next big point I see is that going beyond 125, damage gets too high. And frankly, that's just, it's bullshit. Just to put on a couple different weapons here, I'm going to put on a couple different weapons, and then we're just going to go to the respec and just kind of show what damage would look like. So I have 4 different strength weapons on right now, right? And this is very much a strength build. Obviously, it's 150. I have my vigor at the soft cap. I have strength up at 60, and I have 46 endurance because I'm using heavy-ass weapons. So just respecking. We're going to respec this, and we're going to rebuild this at 125. Now, given, yes, I started as a confessor, this would be slightly better if I started as a different class, but we're not going to worry about that for now. You know, we're not going into optimization. Let's just put most of these same stats in. We'll make a couple sacrifices. We'll keep our mind down at base. Vigor 55 looks good. And I'm already past the point. Let's see, where are we going? There we go. So we are now 125. We have about 200 less health. Attack power, let's see, we got 30 on one weapon. We have 50 on one. We have 33 on another. And then we have like 35 on another. That's it. That's it. That is a very minor damage difference going from 125 to 150. It's almost like, honestly, in my opinion, that's negligible. Now, if I wanted to keep my vigor at 60, and so I knocked even more out of the strength, it starts to get a little more. You know, we're looking at almost 100 on the one armament, about 100 on the second armament. It's getting higher there for sure, but still, I mean, going from 650 to 734, like, that's more damage, but that's not going to turn you into a god that one-shots people all of a sudden. It's not. So that's just a strength build. Now, obviously, strength builds, I think they are the common denominator. So I also want to show a casting build and then a hybrid build as well to show the difference in those stats and the damage and how they could even function or lack thereof at 125. So we're going to hop on over. This is a int build. Int, obviously, we're going all the way up to 80 because that's roughly where the scaling stops. That's where we get the majority of damage from our spells. Now this build has, I mean, this is super basic. We have a staff, we have one weapon, we have a dagger, and we have a parry shield. Besides that, all lightweight armor. Don't have any boosting talismans or anything. So the biggest thing I would be losing access here is going to be my int. Now we are at 373 and can't scaling. So if I rebirth, most of these stats are going to stay the same. I see a lot of people like, oh, as a sorcerer, you only need 20 on mind. No, that's bullshit. Like, if you want to play a sorcerer and you don't want to have to chug flasks constantly, you need more than 20 mind. But you know what? We're going to do it. Just for the sake of argument, we're going to do it. Let's do my 17 endurance here. We're going to get my vigor up. We're going to keep it a little lower. We'll say put it at 50. And then let's see how high we can get in. So int, I am now up to 70. So at this point, I could still use like moon if I wanted. Look at my damage though. Like look at the difference here. My damage on my weapon has almost no difference. I know we can't look at incant scaling, but I know the incant scaling I've lost roughly about the sorcery scaling is about 15%. 60 to 80 is like a 30% gain on your scaling. So I've lost about 15%, dropping down to 70. So 15% less spell damage, a negligible amount of less weapon damage. My health is 100 less, and the big hit is my FP. My ability to cast has been cut by roughly a quarter. That's huge. That is gonna make my life just that much harder. People are gonna be just running me down and slapping me in the face while I'm trying to chug my blue flasks. Could I play it at 125? Sure, but that's not gonna really be all that fun. You know, people just beat my ass because I don't have any mana to cast with. Let's look at a hybrid build. This is a Arcane Faith hybrid build. This one is focused around using the dragon spells. Dragon spells are super cool. They're super fun. They have high requirements. You need to have FP to cast them because they're like a diesel engine. They just chug through it. Other stuff. Moderate amount of endurance, so I can hit like 61 poise. These weigh nothing. So low weight weapons at 5.5, parry, dagger, and shield. Pretty straightforward, I think. Let's look at the stats. So same thing. Let's knock some down. We'll say I knock this down. We're going down to 55. Dragon spells are expensive. I don't really want to lose my mind here, but still, I'll drop some mind. I'll knock that down to, I'll drop 5 points out of that. Endurance I had at 25. We'll keep that there. This is for weapon requirements. Everything else was based there. Now this is where it gets tricky. I want to be able to cast this stuff. I'm an Arcane Faith build. I have to have, you know, a decent amount of split here just to be able to cast. So I could go 25-40. Okay, that kind of functions. Let's look at the changes though. Attack power, completely negligible. We're looking at what, 14 damage difference on my weapons? That's, yeah. Dropping down to 25 has made almost zero damage difference in my weapon damage. As for my Faith in Arcane, that's certainly lower. That's definitely a lot lower than it was. Not sure how that's going to impact our scaling exactly, but it definitely is lower. Health, we're about 200 less, and my mind, a decent chunk off the mind. So, once again, going to a lower level, what has this affected? Ultimately, my damage is going to be roughly the same as it is, except it's just going to be harder for my spells to actually do damage. The hybrid build is not going to be as hybrid-y as it is. Let's look at one more, just to really drive home why it makes so little sense. And this is more of a true hybrid. This is close to like a quality build. Let's look at this one. I think this one is a good example. This is a build that I don't feel could function as well at 125. Now, when I did this build, this is a dexterity-focused build. Okay? One of the big things here is we went up to 30 strength because I really like the idea of poking while being behind the Erdtree Great Shield. Just to even use this thing, of course, we had to have our endurance up to about 33. So we had to really distribute our stats out. Now, let's say we still wanted to keep that Erdtree Great Shield. So we have to hit 30 there. We have to hit 33 here. If I leave my mind down at base, I mean, God, at a bare minimum 16. That gives me like 4 casts or 5 casts, I think, of my main ability. Let's leave our vigor lower. We'll leave that at 50. Put that 1 point in faith that I had, and then dex. How high can I get my dexterity? All right, so where I'm at now, I could still use my great shield. I have less mind. I have 200 less health. Damage difference is about negligible. We're looking at about 40 damage less keeping this build. And the one thing I want to point out is the big argument is going to 150, you know, you deal too much damage, or everything becomes a bullgoat monster, or whatever the case is. Those are all phallical talking points. None of them make sense. These were 4 incredibly different builds, all at 150. None of them were bullgoat monsters. All of them had incredibly distinct abilities. You know, a dedicated mage, a shield poke dex build, a unga bunga strength build, and then a double short sword arcane dragon breath thing. Those are all incredibly different. None of these are do everything builds. And the biggest thing, honestly, I'm losing such little damage here, but on the flip side, I'm losing 200 extra health. And we know how hard everything hits in this game. So by that logic, honestly, I would argue that you're worse off at 125, or you're going to be worse off even at 120. I can't, I have to be at 40 to at least hit it. Because the sacrifices that you're really going to see, where you're going to see people that are really, you know, dropping stats, it's going to be in vigor. And personally, I wouldn't want to do PvP with 1631 health. That's just asking to get blown away. Do not like. Not going to be a good time. So ultimately, what the point I'm trying to make here is the difference in damage between 125 and 150 is negligible for the most part. After you hit those soft caps, even just the first soft cap, after you get to about 55, that damage difference is going to be mostly negligible. It's going to hurt hybrid builds more, because obviously they don't have as much stats to throw around. That much makes sense. But the biggest hit is going to be in health, and it's going to be in FP. So it's going to be people being able to use their spells, people being able to use their weapon arts. On that note, looking across history, Dark Souls 2 had a meta of 150. One of the fun reasons for that is we had this wonderful stat called adaptability, where you had to level adaptability, otherwise you didn't really get your iframes. And what I want to, the reason I'm bringing this up in the first place, is back in the day, mind was a stat that was meant for casters. When you leveled your mind, you got your FP, you got your spell slots. That's no longer the case. Every single build now has access to spell slots. But you know what every build does need now? Mind. Even to a minimal extent. Not every build needs 30 mind, but even melee builds are going to benefit from it because of the Ash of War system and how integral those ashes are to your build. So you could even make an argument now that even your most basic melee build is still going to benefit from a minor investment in mind. Even if it's only 10 points, even if it's just getting your mind up to 20, just putting more FP into the tank so you can actually use your spell parries, so you can use your weapon Ashes of War, that's going to make PvP more interesting, and people are going to be more focused on fighting and less on running around and chugging cerulean flasks. The next thing I want to talk about, another point Aura brought up, poise is dumb. So that beyond 125, everything becomes a Havel monster. Well, that's honestly, that's bullshit. That is a talking point that I cannot stand fucking hearing. With nothing on, with literally, if you only have on Erdtree Favor +2, Great Jar's Arsenal, and Bullgoat, you need 30 endurance just to have those on. But you know what? Just for the sake, let's see what I would need to become a Havel mage here. Because this is the argument everyone says. So you go to 150, it's going to be all Bullgoat monsters. All Bullgoat monsters. Let's find out. All right, so we are currently at 80.2 equip load, right? Now at 80.2, if I divide that into 0.887, that calculates for my amulets. That's 90.4. So just to have my same basic stuff on, I'm going to get up to 90.4 on my endurance. 90.4. There we go. 40 endurance. Let's say we drop this down. Let's say we have the thick armor, so we don't need as much health. We'll put it down at 40. Why not? We'll put it at 40. Let's see how much we're putting into it. So 150. All right, I've hit my 80 in. There we go. I can now be a Bullgoat monster. Now, in exchange for that, I have sacrificed 300 health. I have also taken a massive chunk out of my FP. But let's say I wanted to do this at 125. Well, here's the thing that nobody seems to want to talk about. We have a flask effect, and this is the most ridiculous thing. We have a flask effect right here. We have a flask effect that you can do that gives you perpetually infinite equipment load for 3 minutes. And so any level could do this. You could be a level 50 character doing duels using that flask, and you're going to be infinite Bullgoat man for 3 minutes. And so if we are putting the meta strictly towards the dueling scene, what's to stop people from just using that flask constantly? Now, I know it's going to be banned in like tournament play, but outside of a tournament that you have organized, that you are you know, verifying what people are using, what's coming in. You know, the argument I always see is at 150, everyone's going to be a Bullgoat monster. But the reality is, if we are strictly looking at the duelist scene and people that only want to duel, people that are, they're going to do everything to secure that win. That is what they want. They're there to get that bread. Guess what? You're going to have a lot of people that are going to do that. Outside of very specific tournaments where it's banned and they can't enter, you are going to have people that are Bullgoat monsters, but it's not going to be because they invested in endurance. It's going to be because they just popped a flask effect. Because what duel is going to last longer than 3 minutes? They're going to pop that. They're going to have infinite poise along with their armor, and then you're not going to be able to do anything about it. On top of that, out of all the builds I've shown, none of these at 150 have been a Havel monster. Because the reality is, let's be honest here, aside from the sweatiest fucking nerds in this community, most people are going to prefer fashion. Yes, do I have some Bullgoat leggings on? Well, yes, I do. They're under a skirt. Look at the rest of this fashion. This looks fucking good, okay? This looks really good. And you know as well as I do that everyone that's been in this community for a while, they want fashion. Not everybody is going to run around as a massive Bullgoat. I've been playing at 150 since launch. I have 500 hours in the game. You want to know how many Bullgoat monsters I've seen? Like 10. And it was like Bullgoats using dual whips or something. It wasn't Bullgoats running around fast casting magic. That's not a thing. And I hate it because it's such a disingenuous bullshit talking point. The last thing that I hear a lot of is at 150, you have too much. And that with the meta, you can't have it all. Once again, no. It just doesn't make sense. 150, dedicated strength, dedicated decks, dedicated int. This is an 80. This one's fun. Let's look at this guy. This is a faith build. Every single one of these 150 builds is a distinct identity focused around a core build ideology. This has 12 strength and 16 dex, literally weapon requirements. That's it. It has the weapon requirements to use the stuff. My strength could be lower if I had a different starting class, but that's it. This put 80 into faith because I want to nuke you with my spells. I have 26 mind so I can cast those spells, and then I even took a little bit out of vigor. I have enough endurance for a medium roll. This is not a Havel monster. Do I have a 61 poise breakpoint so I can get through a curved sword running attack? Yes, I do. Am I also maintaining fantastic fucking drip? You're goddamn right I am. Because that's going to be more important. Now, obviously, I could boost my endurance up to 40, and I could drop 20 points out of faith, and I could be a Bullgoat. But both me and every other person I know in this community cares more about their fashion than gotta have that best armor. And on top of that, that once again completely negates the point that in duels people could just use hyper mega bullshit flask and be Bullgoat monsters anyway. So ultimately, the point that I want to make, what this all comes down to, is at the end of the day, here are my major reasons why 150 makes the most sense. One, most people are finishing the game at higher levels. That's just how it is. It's a bigger game. It's taken longer to get through. People are finishing the game at higher levels. And this isn't even including the potential of DLC on the horizon. If we get DLC, you think people aren't going to want to level up more? And you know, I know that's a conversation for a different time, but for the 125 gang, guess what? 150 kind of future-proof stuff a little bit, because right now this is a New Game Plus save. I was able to comfortably get through New Game Plus, reach the Elden Throne, do all that at 150. If I can do that at 150, you could probably make an argument that, hey, even at DLC, 150 is an appropriate level. If you can get through New Game Plus at 150, you can probably tackle the DLC at 150. But getting through the game at 125, that gets a little sketchy. Getting through New Game Plus at 125, that gets sketchier. And tackling DLC at 125, possibly on New Game Plus, I sure as shit don't want to do it. Point 2. Damage between 125 and 150 is a negligible difference. The biggest difference between those levels is going to be the hit that players take to health and the hit that players take to supplementary stats, stuff like FP. If damage going too high is your primary concern, pushing for a higher level of 150 makes it so more people can hit that 60 breakpoint on vigor and therefore have more health for PvP and have fights that last longer. Because as we've seen, the damage difference is minimal. The health difference, however, can be significant. Point 3, poise is irrelevant to the conversation. You could be a Bullgoat at any level if you wanted to. It's not that 150 is going to make everything Bullgoats. That's not. And then point 4, that you can't have everything. Well, I mean, I've just gone through like 5 different distinct builds at 150. None of them have everything. Most of them are, you know, with the exception of the strength and dex build, all 3 of the caster builds are literally meeting weapon requirements. I don't think I would call meeting weapon requirements having everything. I mean, that's just me, but it seems to me like this is a faith build, and I'm really leaning hard into the faith scaling on this thing, considering how low my dex and my strength are. So that's going to be it. You know, I'm tired of this discussion. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is play what level you want. If you want to stay at a lower level, if you want to stay at 100 or 120 or 125, do it. I like 150. I don't plan on going any lower. If you want to stay low, that's fine. That's your decision. Play the game the way that you want to play. I'm going to play the game the way that I want to play. But the last thing I'm going to deal with is fucking people constantly telling me, yeah, you got to stay at 120. No, I don't. 150 feels comfortable. I finished the game above 150. I'm all about 150. That's it from me. I'm out. Y'all have a nice day. See you later.